So I am Sakshi Babur Paul. I am an associate professor at School of Fashion and Textiles Department, and my core specialism lies in textile handicrafts and pattern surface textiles of India. And with an experience of 14 years, I'm pursuing my PhD from National Institute of Fashion Technology. And my today's paper is also based on my PhD research. Apart from teaching, I'm also managing a woman-centric home decor and interior design brand by the name Design Station, which focuses on craft and culture and empowering women by providing them employment opportunities. Design Station also has been a sponsor to my research. My guide and my co-author is Dr. Sudha Dhingra. She is a senior faculty at National Institute of Fashion Technology. And she's also her competence also lies in study of crafts, Indian and world textiles. Presently, she's a director of a director of the Center of Khadi Excellence, and my third another external supervisor and a co-author to this paper is Dr. Pragya Sharma, who is a clinical psychologist, and she's been working in the field since more than 11 years, and she has completed her PhD from All India Medical Sciences Institute, that is AIMS. So my title is Psychological Wellbeing of Women Prison Inmates Through Hand Textile Crafts. So the aim of this paper is to study the impact of hand textile crafts on the well-being of women creators, of women inmates in India, inmates in Indian prison. So the paper begins with gathering secondary data to evaluate the impact of hand textile craft practitioners on the well-being of the women participants. So the secondary data was collected, and on the basis to test the secondary data, the research was conducted on an experimental group of prison inmates or female, which is targeting it was a voluntary participation, and from 25 to 30 women were voluntary who participated in this research. So the experimental study was conducted, and after the volunteers were selected and they were chosen. Basically they participated themselves in this research. Then the training module was designed, and the training module was also administered. That yes, by the researcher. After the training module was designed, the well-being scales were administered on the experimental group. So these well-being scales were DAS-21 and WHO BREF. These were standardized scales that was administered on these experimental group, and then finding and analysis was done. So this is still in process, but preliminary findings has been done through this research paper. So collaborator of the study was India Vision Foundation. So India Vision Foundation was actually started by Dr. Kiran Bedi, who has won this Raman Magsaysay Award, which is equivalent to Asia Nobel Peace Prize Award. And she was an IPS lady who wanted to forge the positive relationship between people and creative leadership. So in this research, India Vision Foundation played as a liaising role between the researcher and the prison reformatory. So all the kind of communication between the researcher and the and all the kind of because it's a very sensitive sample to be worked upon. So all the approvals, all permissions and everything was actually they were the one who was helping us to achieve the results, and they were helping us to conduct the research. So they were the liaising role between researcher and the reformatory. So, as we all know, and in fact, in India, this stays true, but yes, all over the world, we all see that hand textile craft is a medium of self expression. Women have always been, and in fact, a lot of people have always been involved in all hand textile craft from childhood, and especially in Indian culture, where women has been engaged as since childhood. It's a tradition that has been passed on from families, from their grandparents to mothers to their children, that learn how to do knit, stitch, embroidery. This is something that has been there since childhood, and we see happening. So it is a core. It's a core culture that has been developed in women, especially. And we also know that women plays an important role in the society. They are not even they are the caregivers in the family, and they're also working nowadays and playing a multidisciplinary role. And we also know that 70% of workers in Indian handicraft, handloom sector are women. So hence it is very important for us to understand that study of impact of hand textile craft on the well-being of women creators. So objective was study was three major objectives. First was secondary research was conducted to gather the information between the relationship between hand textile craft practices and their impact on psychological well-being. To develop an intervention module to teach the craft practice to an experimental group of women inmates of Bhondsi Prison, Gurgaon, Haryana, India Reformatory, to evaluate the impact of craft activities on the group of women inmates on Bhondsi Prison, Gurgaon. So, first, to begin with the research, the literature review was done, and 68 international papers and 10 books and national papers were also taken out and read. And mainly this was all about how there has been historic impressions about hand textile craft among women, how well-being is connected to hand textile craft, how creativity and well-being leads to enhanced well-being, especially amongst women, and how this act as a therapeutic use of that as a tool to amongst women, that this kind of leads to the it's a calming thing. So that was the whole idea of covering this literature review. So when the gap in the literature was found was that there has been immense studies about hand textile crafts on well-being of women, but there has been more and more studies were found on international level, but there was hardly any instances that was found in India confirming about role of hand textile crafts among women, so women well-being. So hence this research was important. Secondly, the gap that I found was that more international studies was done to analyze the amongst white collar job, like there has been knitters and embroiders, and there has been research that is conducted on literate background, but there was hardly any literature that was covered among blue collars or unorganized sectors of people who has illiterate population of India and lesser income groups. There wasn't any data that has been collected on them. And third, all studies indicate majorly the impact of workshop in a journalized form. So there wasn't any proper designed how the workshops needs to be designed so that these studies can be conducted on an experimental group. So that was not found as of now in my studies. So these were the three main things, and hence I started research on that. So my research methodology approach was very simple. There were three major areas. One was a literature review, which had qualitative research. Then to test the literature, the results that has come in the literature review, wanted to test in an Indian workspace and Indian like a society. And to do that, I chose Indian prison inmates. And why I took that as a sample, because I felt, most of the people like in our country especially, the woman that has been, has always been um, not very, they are being affected, and that's why they're in prison, and they are in a controlled group, and there has, so that the training can be conducted. So hence, the inmates were chosen, and I wanted to do study on how it has actually affects their mental well-being, because they have been living a disdainful life living in the prison. So hence, I chose them, and design training module was conducted. The study three, and after doing the training module, the testing of efficacy of training of module was done. And how it was done was, we've used standardized well-being scales, WHOQOL BREF and DAS-21, which is depression, anxiety, stress scale. And WHOQOL scale is which measures psychological, physiological, sociological, and environmental factors. So these scales were used, and they were analyzed after training of the after training was conducted. So these were the well-being scales. It is actually depression, anxiety, and stress scale was introduced by Lovenbort, and WHO scale is actually it's a quality of life instrument, and that contains 26 questions, which has an individual perception about their health, well-being, and overall how do they feel in last 2 weeks. So the respondents were asked these questions, and they kind of answered them, and then the results were analyzed. Apart from these standardized well-being scales, there were other questionnaires that was formed to do the survey with the respondents, with the participants. That preliminary survey was conducted, then the feedback was conducted, and there was other information was carried on. So the questionnaire drafting framework was designed as follows: that there was a mapping of questionnaire, then the target respondents were taken into consideration, the language was taken into consideration, that what language they speak and how do they speak, and how they understand, and they connect it to the better, connect themselves when they hear certain things. So all the context was taken care into considerations. The language was taken into consideration, what language do they speak, and how we should ask them questionnaire, and then ask them questions. And we should be very sensitive while asking the questions, because they are in a very sensitive mode as well sometimes, because they're away from their families. They are convicted because of certain things, and they feel they are not part of the society. So all those questions were really thought of, and in fact all the English questionnaire was first converted into Hindi language, a local language, so that they can understand. And then pilot testing was done, and then final question was formed. Now, how the training module was developed was that the locale of the study was decided, that it is one prison was decided, Bhondsi Prison was decided, which is in Haryana, Gurugram. And then the craft modules were decided. So few crafts were taken into considerations after literature review, that what are the crafts that are mostly practiced by people and they would like to learn more, and how these crafts needs to be taught to them, so that though we don't actually, in India, nobody need to learn any craft. They're always been learned from their ancestors or from their parents. They don't need to learn anything. It's just about training them to make something more useful, much more creative, so that they have an opportunity to do a creative outlet. So that's why these crafts were taken into consideration. So 4 different crafts were workshops were designed, modules were designed, which was crocheting, tassels and pom-poms, application of hand embroidery, and application of knitting. So all these 4 modules were designed, and then again the licensing partner was India Vision Foundation. Every module was vetted by India Vision Foundation all the materials, all the things, how it will be researched, how the modules will be conducted, everything was taken after, was approved by them. Then only these modules were finalized. So data collection happened at, again, Bhondsi Prison, which was inmates prison in Delhi, outskirts of Delhi. That was Gurugram, and that was happened in India. So module development process was, there were few primary pillars. One was that while determining the module development, what was most important thing was that it should be, the content should be rich and engaging. It should have an outlet for expressing their emotions. Then a creation of skill content. There was some domestica courses, other courses that were seen, and how we could take these courses forward, and the learning of those things could be, so that we could introduce something new and what is happening in the trend. Then listing and managing logistics requirement, that what all tools are required, and approval of those tools, because these sensitive tools like needles and all these things were very sensitive part that was not allowed in prison. So we had to take permission of it, and analyzing and replicating the techniques using by other researchers. So the modules were designed in a way that they could use, even if once the research is conducted, they can they can map this modules in by other people, other trainers, and this could be conducted even if we are not there. And experts inputs were taken from art therapists, and also incorporating insights from rapport building sessions. So we also conducted rapport building sessions before actually conducting the research. I went researcher, and then went to the inmates and spent some time understanding them, knowing them, what they actually need, what they actually want. And we did like few exercises which just talked about themselves, and it was a very good emotional connect also with the researcher. So these were the rapport building sessions where we kind of introduced everything on the table. They said that do whatever you wish to do. There was no training that was done. Nothing was done. All the different materials was given to them so that they could just spend time with different materials and do whatever they wish to do. So then hand textile craft was making was as a self-consumption for gifting. So they wanted to make something for their friends or family. It actually served as a challenge, that how to make something, and certain people were not wanting to do it initially, but they were challenging themselves. Yes, I would like to do something with it. What can I do? They were using their minds. There was a high engagement and interest to learn living forms, and that connects with the human emotion. So while I was actually taking part in the research in this whole activity, I was observing what they actually wanted to learn, so that I can design the module based on that. So it also promotes intergenerational connection. While these things were given to them, they kind of remembered their ancestors, and they remembered their family, and they remember what they have learned from others. So they were trying to have their emotional connect with it. Making social connections through craft making. So while they were sitting in the group, they all were enjoying and learning from each other. They were appreciating the financial aspect of textile craft making. They felt that whatever they are learning, they might go out and learn and use this, and maybe that could be their source of income. Expressed emotions. So a lot of people had their emotional outlet while they were practicing the craft. So once the rapport building was developed, I also approached one of the freelance participating artists, practicing art therapists, and I found that what all are important things to keep in mind. He suggested not to focus much on psychological based activities, as I don't belong from a psychological background. I'm more a textile creator, and I'm a more textile teacher, and into textile background. So he suggested not to look into more psychological based activities, but to actually work on some forms and shape that could help them a creative outlet. So those forms and shapes were like toys, animals, and which I could reconfirm it by when I was working with them as a rapport building, that they wanted to make some animals or plants or living beings. So these were the results. This was the approach. This was the outcome of all the research that I conducted. And then finally, what approach I used while making the modules was that to encourage the participants, more goal oriented activities were designed so that they could finish it in a one session. Every session was planned with an interval of 7 to 10 days, so that whatever has been taught to them, they have enough time to practice them, and there was no stress for them to complete it. They can complete it. It was more of a process driven activity, so that they don't feel that there is a burden for them to complete that activity. They have their enough time to complete that. The training sessions were spread across 12 sessions across 3 months to evaluate the results. And then 4 crafts of the module were initially proposed in the rapport building session, so that they can choose anything that they like. So groups were formed based, as it was a voluntary research, and it was chosen as per what people wanted to what inmates wanted to choose. So different modules were designed, and they were given opportunity to choose between the 4 modules. So these were the materials and equipments that was sourced for the making the modules. And we had threads, scissors, all this. And again, it was approved by the committee members of Reformatory, and they approved it. And after checking and after a lot of investigation, we were allowed to use these materials. So then finally, the module content was decided. The content was designed as way that it was introduction, then material exploration was done, then shape and form exploration was done. Then they were given a mood board, an inspiration board to work upon, like how we work with our students, so that they know what they want to do it. Then making the products from the mood board, color coordination, theme-based products, then they produced. Then they also developed a social connection. So they were making products for their friends, family, and even people who were there, who were living with them. They became independent. Then theme-based group activities were given. Then individual craft-based activity was given, followed by creating personal utility product. And then finally, they became independent learners, and the skill was developed, so that they are quite aware how different materials using different shapes and forms, one technique can be explored in different ways. So training module timeline implementation was done this way, that first 4 weeks was, meetings was done, logistics were planned, establishing the plan of action. Then between week 5 to 8, we had meetings with stakeholders to get all the approvals. Then from 9 to 10, there were rapport building session. Then from week 21 to 9 to 12, from week 13 to 16, module was designed, questionnaires were designed, and pilot testing was run. And training of month 1 was done. Then training of month 2 was done. Then training of month 3 was done. So 3 months of training was designed in this manner. So after the training module was conducted and the implementation of training module was done, then we had to test the efficacy of the modules. So for that, we chose the sample. And how we chose the sample, they were prison inmates, and they were the preliminary questionnaire was given to them to know that for how long they are punished. We couldn't have done this research if they were about to get free in 1 month. So if they are there in the prison for 6 months, then only they could participate in this research and participate in this training program. And then They may not have practiced textile art. That was their criteria. And the engagement will happen with the proficient. And once they know how to once they learn the craft, they could also use this craft for to earn their livelihood. So sample determination happened this way. There were approximately 80 to 90 inmates. Out of them, 40 to 45 inmates actually voluntarily participated in the research, and 40 to 45 do not wanted to participate in the research. So then 40 to 45 became voluntary participation became our experimental group. And then the other people who did not participate became our controlled group. So these were the two groups that were designed, that was formed actually, not, and it was actually formed as a voluntary participation only. So that we could, do comparison between the two groups who took part in the training program versus who did not took part in the training program. So out of that, 9 participants got released from the prison while we were conducting the training, and 3 non-participants got released from the prison. So we were left with 31 experimental group who were participants, and non-participants were a control group. There were 38 inmates. So this was a methodology used in data collection, which was preliminary survey, voluntary participation, list of experimental and control group. So, there were preliminary survey was done to understand whether who wanted to participate, what are their understanding about the craft, do they want to participation, do they want to participate also or not. So everybody took part in that survey, and then we further decided who is going to be participants and who is going to be non-participant. Then from that survey, we also found out that what exactly they wanted to learn. So we made groups of participation, that some wanted to do tassels, some wanted to do knitting, crocheting, and then we also administered after training session, then training session was started. Then we did administration of the scales, well-being scales happened, even pre-training and then post-training. And then we got a final feedback from the participants also. How did they feel about training session? So this was all the surveys that were designed, and this was the time duration of these surveys. So preliminary surveys took about 15 to 20 minutes, and they identified demographics, what they wanted to do. Then first round of well-being scales were conducted, which was
Sakshi, I'm sorry, but time is, can you come to your conclusion? Because your time is up.
Okay, all right. No worries. So basically, these were the procedures, and then these were the inspiration boards that were used for them to conduct the survey. And this was all, we converted into Hindi language, all the boards, so that they can create something. And these were the training sessions. I'll just do a quick video. So this was a rapport building session so that we could understand them. So they were really engaged in the activity, and they were singing. So this was a final product outcome of tassels, pom-poms, and crochet. They created living objects. So this was the final outcome that they produced in the training program. And the demographics of the study was found that 55% were among the age of 29 to 39 age group, and mostly people were married. Inmates were married. 60% of female inmates were housewives. They were not working, and they had income of less than 85 lakhs. 30% of them were convicted, and 35% were the people who have even not studied till 10th class. So this was the final analysis, final finding, that we found that the base analysis was done, And we did a survey of experimental group and control group. So both the groups have similar level of anxiety, depression, and stress. And WHO was also very similar. Quality of life was very similar between both the groups, experimental and control group. So once after doing the intervention of this module, we saw that there was a increase, overall quality of life was increased between control group and experimental group. So control group had lesser quality of life, and there seemed to be a better quality of life. Similarly, the third round analysis was done amongst the experimental group. So we saw that how overall there was a 3-round assessment was done between the experimental group, and saw that there was a reduced depression, reduced anxiety, and reduced stress overall. So the feedback from the experimental group was that most of the participants participated in pom-pom and tassel making. 97% practice hand textile. Most of them actually practiced it before, but they had a good experience while participating in this workshop, in this modules. Most of the participants experienced positive emotions during and before study. With the emotions were also, mapped while they were doing the study. Then findings were, there were 87% would like to engage and learn the crafts after release also. So they wanted to use this craft later as well. And 61% of the participant would like to engage in the learned craft as a hobby. So highlights from the study was that the baseline survey showed no significant difference between experimental and the control group. An analysis showed a lower level of anxiety, depression, and stress among experimental group. And the obtained results of ETA suggest that intervention of hand textile craft practices has a significantly large effect of training on the participants on mental health. It showed decreased level of depression, anxiety, and stress scales. And similar results were found in quality of life, although the detailed research is still going on, and it will analysis are still happening. But yes, these were preliminary studies. And this was the feedback that has been received from India Vision Foundation, that it was a wonderful, they had a good, they could see that the prison inmates were very happy doing this exercise, and they were creatively involved, and the results were very good. So these are the people who are part of India Vision Foundation who gave this feedback. And I would like to acknowledge my Miss Monica Dhawan, who's the director of India Vision Foundation, who helped me to conduct this research. And without her support, I wouldn't have been able to, and her team, I wouldn't have been able to conduct this study. And yeah, this is an ethical clearance for the study, and that's it. Thank you.